The Harrison estate was built to impress. Crystal chandeliers, Persian rugs, marble hallways that gleamed like mirrors. It looked like a palace where nothing could go wrong. But beneath the chandeliers, beneath the polished perfection, something dark was brewing. And it all came crashing down one evening when the millionaire's wife stood up in front of everyone and tore the maid's uniform. The silence that followed, it was the kind of silence that changes lives forever. But before that explosive moment, let me take you back. Maya Thompson was just 26, humble beginnings, raised by her grandmother, working 2 jobs while studying business at night. When she got hired as a housekeeper for the Harrison family, she didn't see it as just cleaning floors or serving meals. She saw it as a stepping stone, a chance to build the future she dreamed of. She wore a simple gray uniform every day. Yet somehow, she carried herself with more dignity than the glittering chandeliers above her head. Quiet, respectful, but determined. Richard Harrison, the man of the house, 42 years old, a self-made millionaire with a confidence that didn't need to shout. His eyes, dark, sharp, calculating. A man who had built empires with his mind, but also a man who carried a loneliness that no fortune could erase. His wife, Victoria, blonde, beautiful, sharp as glass, old money. She knew the rules of high society, what to wear, which galas to attend, how to keep her reputation flawless. To outsiders, she looked perfect. But inside, she was a storm waiting to break. And then there was Emma, Richard's 12-year-old daughter from his first marriage, innocent, sweet. She looked at Maya not as the help, but as family. From the beginning, Richard's gaze lingered on Maya. Not inappropriately, but with something different. When others gave her orders, he gave her conversations. When others ignored her, he asked her opinions about books, about art, about life. Maya tried to keep her distance. She knew the danger of blurred lines between worlds divided by money and status. But Victoria saw everything, and every small kindness Richard showed Maya burned in her chest like poison. At first, it was little things. Victoria criticizing Maya's work for no reason. The flowers weren't right. The silver wasn't polished enough. Her uniform looked wrinkled. Smiles that dripped with venom, but Maya endured it all with quiet grace. She nodded, apologized, worked harder, even when it wasn't her fault, even when the other staff noticed. And then came the night, a Thursday evening, dinner party, the kind of night Victoria lived for. Business associates, society wives, a table set like something out of a magazine, crystal glasses, tall orchids, candles flickering like stars. Maya moved like a shadow, graceful, efficient, flawless. She had polished, pressed, and prepared everything. To the guests, she was invisible. To Richard, she was indispensable. To Victoria, she was intolerable. And then, it happened. Maya reached for a plate. A simple, ordinary motion, but Victoria's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Maya!" The room froze. Forks stopped midair. Conversations died. Every eye turned. Victoria rose from her chair, silk dress glowing in the candlelight. But her smile, it was sharp enough to kill. "Come here," she said sweetly, the kind of sweetness that hides venom underneath. Maya's hands trembled as she stepped forward. Richard's jaw tightened. The guests sat in perfect, dreadful silence. And then Victoria struck. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice ringing like a queen in her court. "It seems our help has forgotten her place." Gasps, uneasy glances. Maya's throat closed. She wanted to protest, but years of being the help had taught her one thing. Sometimes silence is the only shield. But Victoria wasn't finished. She circled Maya like a predator, words dripping with poison. You walk through my halls like you belong. You speak to my husband like you're equals. Do you think this is your world?" And then she reached out. Her manicured fingers grabbed Maya's collar. Rip. The sound tore through the dining room. The maid's gray uniform split. Her shoulder exposed. Her dignity ripped apart in front of everyone. Maya gasped. Her hands clutched the torn fabric to her chest, her eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of them. The guests shifted, horrified. Mrs. Patterson, one of the wives, looked away in shame. Emma, the 12-year-old girl, stood frozen in the doorway, her voice trembling. "Mom, why are you hurting Maya?" The room broke. The silence became unbearable. And then Richard Harrison stood. His chair scraped against marble like thunder. He rose to his full 6-foot frame, eyes burning with fury. He looked at his wife, then at Maya, then at the horrified guests. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of judgment. "Victoria, what you have just done is unforgivable." The room gasped. Victoria's smile faltered. She thought he'd stand with her. She thought he'd protect her. She thought wrong. Richard walked around the table, took off his dinner jacket, draped it over Maya's torn uniform, shielding her, protecting her. "I am profoundly sorry," he whispered to her. "No one should ever be treated this way. Not in my home." The guests sat in stunned silence. A millionaire defending the maid his wife had just humiliated. The power dynamic of the house had shifted in an instant. And then Richard turned to his guests, his voice firm, steady, undeniable. "My wife has forgotten herself tonight. But Maya is not just an employee. She is a human being, a woman of dignity, and she deserves your respect." The room erupted in whispers. The truth was out. The millionaire had chosen kindness over cruelty. And the fallout? It would change everything. For a moment, the grand dining room sat in silence. Crystal glasses trembled in nervous hands. No one dared move. And then, whispers. "Did you see that?" She tore her uniform, in front of everyone. The guests looked at one another, eyes darting, unsure whether to excuse themselves or pretend nothing had happened. This wasn't the evening of elegance they had expected. This was scandal. Victoria stood frozen, lips trembling, fury boiling beneath her carefully painted smile. She could feel the judgment of every single eye. She wanted to scream, to regain control, but her husband's words had struck harder than any slap. Richard had chosen the maid. And then, Emma. The little girl who had watched in horror finally found her voice. She stepped forward, her small frame shaking, her eyes brimming with tears. "Maya is my best friend," Emma said, her voice cracking. "She's the only one who listens to me. You can't hurt her." The room broke. The guests gasped, some covering their mouths, others staring at their plates in shame. A child's honesty had cut through the thick air of pretense like a blade. Maya's tears finally spilled, not from humiliation, but from the unbearable weight of kindness she hadn't expected, from a child, from a man, from fate itself. Victoria snapped. "Enough!" she screamed, slamming her hand on the table so hard the crystal rattled. "This is my house, my rules, and no servant, no little girl will defy me." Her voice was wild, desperate, her composure shattered like glass. And that's when Richard delivered the blow that would shatter her world. "No, Victoria," he said coldly. "This was our house, but as of tonight, it is no longer yours." Gasps exploded around the table. Victoria's face went pale, the blood draining from her cheeks. She looked at him as if he had just stabbed her in the heart. "You wouldn't dare," she whispered. But Richard had already dared. In front of everyone, he reached for his phone. With deliberate calm, he dialed. His lawyer, his voice steady, unshaken. "Daniel, draw up the papers, effective immediately. I want her gone." The guests sat stunned, witnessing not just a marital collapse, but a public dethroning. A queen stripped of her crown. Victoria's hands shook as she pointed at Maya. "This is her fault. She's poisoned you against me." But Richard didn't flinch. He looked at her with eyes colder than stone. "No, Victoria. This isn't about Maya. This is about you. About the cruelty you've chosen, the dignity you've destroyed, and the woman you've become." And then, softly, he added, "I will not raise my daughter in a house where kindness is punished and cruelty is paraded as power." Maya stood frozen, Richard's jacket still draped over her shoulders, shielding her like armor. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. Her world had tilted, spun, and broken open in one impossible night. And as the guests quietly excused themselves, whispering furiously behind their hands, one thing was clear. This dinner party was not just scandal, it was the beginning of war. The mansion was quiet again. The echo of slammed doors and hurried goodbyes still lingered in the air. The grand dining table sat abandoned, crystal glasses half full, plates of untouched delicacies growing cold. But upstairs, Victoria seethed. Her reflection in the mirror was unrecognizable. Mascara smeared, lipstick cracked. The flawless, untouchable image she had built over years of high society dinners and charity galas was gone, stripped away in a single night. And she knew exactly who to blame. Maya, the maid who dared to cry, the girl who dared to receive her husband's jacket, the servant who dared to matter. Victoria's nails dug into the marble vanity until her knuckles turned white. "If Richard thinks he can humiliate me, if that child thinks she can shame me, and if she thinks she can steal what's mine," her voice broke into a bitter laugh. "They have no idea who they're dealing with.